Let's talk about Github Copilot. If you don't know what it is, GitHub Copilot is an AI pair programmer that helps you write code faster and with less work. So the million-dollar question that everyone seems so worried about, is GitHub Copilot going to replace your job as a software engineer? Well, the short answer is no. If you're worried about GitHub Copilot replacing your job, you probably have bigger problems in terms of your career. But let's explore the slightly long answer. Can GitHub Copilot really be a threat to software engineers around the world? Well, it depends, because software engineer is really a blanket title for many different kinds of jobs. You could be a web developer, backend developer, solutions architect, automation engineer, reliability engineer, quality assurance engineer, and many other things, and still identify as a software engineer. And the complexity of the work software engineers do also varies a lot. Some are building state-of-the-art architectures that have hundreds of intertwined services and components, while others are simply maintaining existing code bases or creating the same projects repeatedly with minor variations. So when I initially read about GitHub Copilot, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just like any other code completion tool, some of which I've even talked about in this channel. However, I decided to dig a little deeper after I got a ton of messages from you guys asking my opinion on it. I tried it for a week and put it through the trials. I started simple by just using it as a code completion tool. Then I used it to try to replace some of my repetitive coding that I have to do. Then I upped the ante by making it solve a bunch of lead code problems. And finally, I tried to make it do my job for an entire day. And the results were surprising and made me change my stance from no, GitHub Copilot is not a threat to your job to, well, it depends. Let's look at a few example scenarios. If you're a test engineer and exclusively write unit tests for your job, or you are an entry-level software engineer where you're writing basic lead code type functions or minor optimizations, GitHub Copilot can already do some of that. And it wouldn't be hard to imagine it potentially replacing that job function. Or let's say you are mostly a front-end developer, it can help you create boilerplate code, write HTML or CSS snippets, manipulate elements in the DOM. But design is like art, so I find it hard that AI can fully replace that. It will perhaps evolve the role into being able to produce a fully functional starting point, and then the web developer makes changes according to the requirements. Now, if you're a full stack engineer with front-end, back-end, API, storage, and all that, I think this is only going to make you more effective. For example, just a few weeks ago, I had to write a few APIs in C# and the front-end was in Python. I hadn't worked on either of those for a while, so I had to look up the semantics of making a post request in Python and parsing the query and reading the post body as a stream in C# or sanitizing the URL and things like that. Those were very simple things, but it took me an hour to look up references, implement, and test. I tried the same thing this week on GitHub Copilot, and it can effortlessly produce all that code instantly. That's 1 hour saved for me that I can invest in solving the actual problem. And finally, if you're someone who is more of an architect who designs large-scale systems, there isn't much Copilot can actually do for you. You're probably the kind of person that is designing things like GitHub Copilot itself. The point I'm trying to make here is that GitHub Copilot is pretty damn good, and it is only going to get better. However, ideally as a software engineer, your job is ambiguous, full of unknowns, undefined, and vague. It will most likely also have a lot of moving parts, cross-team collaborations, and many different components that run on different technologies and stacks. And if you're doing all that on a daily basis, it is nearly impossible to replace your job with AI. But if you've gotten complacent to a point where your responsibilities have become repetitive and trivial, it's another story. I see this no different than people asking me if ageism is a thing in software engineering. And the answer is no. You got replaced by a younger, more energetic, more passionate person, not because you're old, but because you got complacent and stopped growing. And the only reason you'll ever get replaced by AI is also the same. Your only real defense in that case is to keep learning and continually invest on your own growth. Ways to do that is by reading up a lot on new tech and working on side projects, which makes a good segue to today's sponsor, Hostinger. Whether you're working on web-based side projects, creating an online portfolio, or even maintaining a blog of all your learnings, you will need some form of hosting. Hostinger is a world-class website hosting platform to over 29 million users in 178 countries. For something simple like a blog or a portfolio, you can get started as low as $1.39 a month with the shared hosting plan. If you want slightly more control over your projects, you can switch to the cloud hosting plan for as little as $10 a month, which provides a virtual server and a dedicated IP address. And finally, if your projects have more involved logic with functions or lambdas, APIs, and things like that, you can choose the VPS hosting, which is 30 times faster than the most powerful web hosting services and also has a no downtime policy. Sure, you can just go with Azure or AWS and pick out a set of their services to build up your own hosting, but you'll have to worry about the VM, virtual network, DNS, SSL certificate, app service, and database, all as separate services. That adds a bunch of complexity and costs can add up pretty quickly. If your main goal is to share your knowledge via your blog, display your work as a portfolio, or focus on learning via side projects, then Hostinger can not only get you going in just a few clicks, but comes with a free domain and is significantly more cost-effective. That way, you can ignore the setup and maintenance of your hosting and focus on what matters more. So if you think you'd be interested in that, please visit hostinger.com to find the plan that works best for you. And remember to use the coupon code UTSAV during checkout. Let's talk briefly about how I think something like GitHub Copilot will actually be used and how that can impact the software engineering world in general. I can totally see this being used as a companion where you inject it as part of your CI/CD pipeline where it scans your code base and learns code that has already been merged to your main branch. Then when you send a pull request, before any human spends their valuable time, it will give you suggestions and tips for improvement, almost like a level 1 quality gate before actual engineers review your code. That can prevent feedback round trips, save on engineering time, and also maintain consistency in your code base. I was chatting with a friend about this recently and he mentioned that it could also be used as part of bug triaging. When a bug is filed, GitHub Copilot could get context from the bug, then scan the code base to suggest potential areas to fix. Or if it's simple enough, even provide a potential fix as a first step in the triaging process. I think that's a great idea and can save a lot of dev hours. As far as the impact to engineering in general, as I mentioned before, it can definitely make engineers more productive. And as a result, companies could hire less engineers, so the market could get even more competitive. We also don't know how much an enterprise version of something like this will cost, but as a very far-fetched imagination, in big companies that can actually afford something like GitHub Copilot, perhaps entry-level positions could be deprecated altogether. Netflix already has this hire-only senior engineers model, and something like that can push companies to follow the same trend. In that case, fresh graduates may have to get some years of experience from smaller companies before they can join a big tech company. Obviously, these are far-fetched thoughts. They may never happen. But whenever a very novel thing happens around computer science, there is always some form of ripple effect in the engineering world. Things like GitHub Copilot, Tab9, Kite, they're all trying to do the same thing, make you a more productive software engineer. And that's a good thing. However, whether that will also end up having a negative impact on you will depend a lot on you as a software engineer and how these products will evolve over time. Either way, I urge you all to try it out and see how it works for you. I know that it's still in technical preview right now, so not everyone has access, but join the waiting list if you haven't already and give it a go and let me know what you think about it. And that's all for this video. Like always, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and for more content like this, consider subscribing. If you want to reach out to me personally, hit me up on Instagram at engineeringwithutsav, where I also do a lot of random tech giveaways. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.